Hey everybody, I'm Greg. If you want to make your treadmill more useful, you need to install a desk or work surface like I've got here. So as you can see, I've got my iPad here, my tablet here. Right now it's at about a 35% incline, and I can run, I can jog, I can walk, and this doesn't go anyplace. It won't slide, it won't move around. I could even, let's switch to a magazine or a book. So the same thing with a magazine. It doesn't slide around, in part because of the matting that I've got on here. If it won't stay flat like you need it to, we've got a band here to hold the pages down, and the same thing with a book. Now you can walk at a fairly comfortable pace, and if you want, just hold the book with your hands, turn the pages just like you're sitting in the recliner, but getting something accomplished. Or again, if that doesn't work for you, then use a rubber strap that I'll show you and hold the pages down. If it's a big book or whatever, I've got two of these straps, and if you want, we can put one across the top. We do the same thing with a laptop, and at varying degrees, if you just want to watch a movie or University YouTube, you can put it up here. You can change the position of this, and I'll show you the different articulations and movements. If you really got it at a steep angle, or depending on the grippiness of your work surface and mat, if you want it to hold in place, tuck it underneath the band. So as you can see, I've got it in a fairly elevated position at a good angle for me to read, watch things on my iPad, my tablet. I could have my cell phone sitting here. But let's take a look at some of the articulation and different positions. We can lay it flatter. We can move it forward or backward. And let's say you even want to have a more horizontal or work surface to set your coffee on, maybe do a little keyboarding. So now we've got your keyboard, got your mouse, and right now I've got a full width matting on here to keep things from sliding around. If you're apt to use a mouse, then use a shorter piece. So just take we'll show you this, well, show it to you now. Basically the matting I've got on here to keep things from sliding around is essentially drawer liner. You'll find it as a drawer liner or a rug mat. So we put this underneath rugs on top of our hardwood floors. And it's kind of a rubbery, tacky, cushiony, and you know, if it's not as tacky and grippy as you'd like, wash it off, and it basically keeps things from sliding. So this is a narrower version, so then I've got the surface to my right available for my mouse. So let's show you a different position that might be a little more comfortable for you. If you're short or whatever and this angle is a little too high, we can lower this even more. So now I've got it in the lowest position and a much better angle for keyboarding, possibly writing, just kind of more of a desk height. You can set your phone on here, but so you can see it will reposition or articulate into almost unlimited different positions. So let's take a look at how you can make one and what parts and components you need to do this. So the main component that you're going to need to build this are two TV wall mounts. Basically, it's got articulating arms. Rather than mount it, you know, on a wall sticking out, we essentially turned it upright. So two of these are roughly about $20 a piece, less rebates or sales that you can find. And I'm really impressed with this brand. I've got one similar on a TV right off to the side that I got from Harbor Freight, and it's nowhere near the quality. And it just happens that this Particular one has great height and articulation. Looks like the maximum reach is about 11 inches from the pivot point. So it just worked out great on my particular treadmill. You're going to need some wood screws and washers, I believe about 10 of them. You'll need 4 on each bracket on each side. You'll need probably need some hose clamps, and in particular, probably in this case, you need to find narrow hose clamps instead of the usual wider, let's say radiator hose style clamps. And you might have to do a little hunting in the hardware stores or your big box stores. I ended up finding mine in one of these stores over in their plumbing department rather than automotive, but you never know. But it's roughly about half the width, and I'll show you where that installs on the bracketry. So we talked about the rubber matting. This particular piece is a remnant that we had underneath a area rug on a hardwood floor. I also use it in my tool chests and as a drawer liner to keep things from sliding around. You'll need 1 to 2 of these the resistance bands. This one stretches, so I've actually got 2 of them, so I can put one on the bottom, or I can put one on the top if needed to hold a laptop down, but more specifically I use it to hold the pages down of a book while I want to have my hands free for activity. The other thing that you'll need is probably I believe this is a 3/4 inch PVC cap, and that acts as a bumper down in here. I get 2 of these. It keeps the desk level. One of the pivot points on this particular articulating arm has a screw or bolt that requires an Allen wrench. But what I found is this Allen wrench is a little hard to adjust, so I swapped those out with 2 hex head bolts. The final component, I believe, is the work surface. And this is simply a 12-inch wide by 36-inch long piece of shelving, and it's finished on all sides. One thing to keep in mind though, this is not your typical, let's say 3/4 inch lumber. This is only 5/8 inch thick, so make sure that the wood screws that you get aren't too long, otherwise they're going to be coming up through your topside work surface. And this, of the many DIY projects and things I've MacGyvered over the years, this has got to be one of my best or most beneficial functioning, it's easy for you to say, functional projects that I've come up with. And so much so, I mean, you'd think it's a factory accessory, but actually it's better than that. But basically you can see how it lifts, and in a fully extended position, pretty much these 2 arms, excuse me, articulating arms, are fairly straight, and you can see that I can change the angle of the work surface. Okay, and you saw that it was when I had it down in the fully extended arms. Now we are in basically the let's say desk type position. So depending on your height, and also don't forget about the other component to adjust your height. Increase your incline on your treadmill. If nothing else, you get a little better workout, but that'll raise you up in possibly a better position. So we've got it, as you saw, it articulates up to here. And this is also in this position, besides being the highest I can go, it's also the furthest away from the console. And depending on your treadmill, that might push you back a little further toward the back end of your treadmill that you want, or that you'd like. So this will also articulate one more position. So we can move this short arm forward, and as we do so, then we can also tip our work surface back. And I'm just going to use my body into this a little because I've got it fairly tight. So you can see that I can get it closer to the treadmill console, and I can also get it in a position where I can still see my digital readout here, and my controls are fairly handy below it. Okay, now you can see the underside of the TV mount, my bump stop, my screws, and how I mounted this bracket. Now on mine, and I'm going to suggest this or hope that you have the same opportunity on your treadmill, is to find a place where you can mount it basically on a T. So I've got my arm here, my handle, and also I've got a cross member, and here I've got heart rate monitors in this cross tube as well as control wires. So what I did, I mocked it up initially with zip ties, and I've got that skinny hose clamp back here. But basically, let me put these down, the caps also cover up your mounting brackets, so don't throw those away. But I was able to basically take this bracket, bend it over, and use the two mounting bolts that assemble the handle to the console or the treadmill unit. On the back side here on the cross member, I was able to use the hose clamp to fasten it down. And so this thing is rock solid, and I can move it back and forth, I can wiggle it around, and what I end up doing is moving the entire unit. This thing does not give or have any play. These are very tight articulating arms. And I'll just point back here on the pivot point between this long arm and this short arm is where it used to have that Allen head, and so I changed these out to a hex head to use a wrench so that I could adjust them a little easier and better control. There's two self-locking, these pivot points here and here have two nylon self-locking nuts that you can tighten down, and they pretty much stay in place. That bolt that I replaced over here in this midpoint, I have a little Loctite on there so they don't work themselves loose as you turn and move this assembly around or reposition it. So the only thing I had to do was drill here, and then for me, I bent it over 90 degrees. If you don't have a vise, a big hammer, the ability to bend this metal, but at least have a drill, I would strongly suggest finding a place where that you can drill all the way through your bracket, drill all the way through your handle, and run a bolt straight through there. So bolt it firmly here, and that gives you this directional stability. The hose clamp and the bracket on the cross member keeps things from tipping back and forth this way. So this side to side action. So again, I mean, if you look, I'm actually, this thing's really not moving. I mean, the bracketry and the position, it's moving the entire treadmill assembly. You know, the assembly is very easy. I'm just very pleased with the adaptation of that TV bracket and how well this has worked. It's just improved the versatility and use of the treadmill and or our desire to use it more, so I hope it works for you. Okay, so here's the bracket. So it came out of the package straight, and there was one hole in this already. I drilled another hole, and that allowed me to use the two mounting bolts that assemble the handle to the treadmill. If you're so inclined or don't have these bolts available, then basically keep your bracket flat, but drill through it. For example, let's say this is your bracket. Use this bracketry hole as bracket hole. Drill right through your handle, bolt it solidly to that handle. On the back side, here's that hose clamp. So there are a couple slots already in the bracket, and that's why, based on the size of those slots, I had to go with a narrow hose clamp. But basically that just clamps right around your cross member. Now I did have to disassemble this because I had to reverse 180 the arm on that bracket. So I think out of the box, this bracket would have, would have actually faced outward instead of inward. And I believe the same thing on the mount here. I either had to reverse it, rotate it 180, or I might have had to swap it completely one for the other. And so here you can see that bump stop. So basically I've got that wood screw and washer inside. So again, simple install, just some wood screws and washers to mount it to the desk, the board. Here's that bolt that I replaced. So I needed a bolt and a washer. So really the components are not that are not hard. The tools are not difficult to use. Probably the one thing you might need, depending on the structure and build of your treadmill, is possibly a drill. But it's very important that you get this firmly secured to this bar and the cross member, and that will make this thing rock solid. So there's the finished product and the components underneath the shelf. And here it is back in the horizontal position, and the two caps that we'll use to cover our bracketry. So let's review what was needed to build this ultimate treadmill workstation. We got one or two, these are just resistance bands, cost about $5 a piece. The rubber matting is either drawer liner or rug protectors. This was a scrap I had, but I've also seen rolls of it for about $3. The shelf itself, I believe it was roughly $7. Again, it's 12 inches wide, 36 inches long, and remember, it's about 5/8 inch thick. And so based on that, buy your wood screws accordingly. So I need about 10 wood screws, 10 washers, and you might want to look for, if you need a larger diameter washer with the same size hole, you might want to look for what's called a fender washer. So that's what I think I might be using on this. You're going to need 2 PVC caps as kind of this bump stop here. So when this is fully in the lowest position, this will keep it from tipping at more of an angle, to keep it horizontal, rest against the arm here. And the key components are the 2 TV wall mounting brackets. So for roughly about $50, $55, if you have 2 straps, somewhere around there, you are going to get end up with one of the best treadmill desks and work surfaces that I've seen. I looked at a lot of YouTube videos like you're doing now, and by far this ended up being better than anything else I've seen, even some professional manufactured products. So I hope this video helps you make your treadmill more functional and enjoyable to use.